Hello, hello, hello. It's TeMeka Williams of Love Inspired TG. I do apologize. Got a little delayed, so have to start us off on the road. But I wanted us to be closer to on time. So I definitely feel like it's time to circle back to that whole relationship talk. It's just interesting to me that it's just seems like not only are people having, like, if you're in a relationship, it seems like you're good. Probably staying in that. I know anytime I talk with my friends, I tell them who are married, I always say, no matter how hard it may be, you want to stick with that, because if you've watched previous podcasts, especially the one that kicked everything off, then dating nowadays just seems worse than it ever was. And so just in preparation for this, I was doing a little research about, what is the marriage rates now? We know they've gone down, but we are actually at historical lows when it comes to marriage. So what really attributes to that? And then part of the reason why I decided to go ahead do a relationship podcast too is because one of the people I follow, which again, if you watch the first podcast, the kickoff podcast, I watch Kendra G singles live show occasionally. I'm not as regular as I used to be, but she does she started it off on Instagram, then she added Facebook Live, and now she has it on YouTube, which is great because it's much easier to watch the videos. But just some of the recaps she posts and like people's intentions on there really makes you wonder, do people genuinely believe in and still look for relationships nowadays? And it leaves a lot to the imagination, and it makes you really question, like, what are people really about nowadays? And I personally think a lot of that has to do with the music we listen to now. Like, R&B songs are not the same. Like, you don't hear love songs about what it takes to really be with somebody and really care about them and hold them down. It's not the same. And we have this whole movement now where, what does it mean to be toxic and when is it time to walk away? And just the understanding of that, the balance for that has completely shifted. And let's face it, even more so, like, there's one thing to be in a relationship, but to go down the whole marriage route, right? The difference with that is there's the element of like the government being involved. There's a third party, and it just, a lot of people I talk to say it just seems like racket, like it's a legal document that trips you up. It ends up making a whole bunch of other people money and leads to the demise of others. So there's that spin on it. But at the end of the day, what is it that we as people believe in? That's really the conclusion I've come to, where I'm really like, oh, when it comes to believing in others, yeah, we can do that. Trusting other people, we do that to an extent. The world's gone a little crazy, so it's not as easy to trust. You got to do a good job vetting people, and with the things that we're all facing now, and just when it comes to mental health and the need to take care of your personal needs, like that, I think is what makes it harder to go into a relationship with an open mind, open eyes, and really and really make progress in getting to know one another. we live in a world where we've got a ton of instant gratification. We've got people who are just quick to cut one another off, to move on, and supposedly it's easy to meet people, but are we making those deeper connections with people? So when it gets down to it, at the end of the day, our relationships that we're forming, those deep connections, are we really getting to know people that we spend time with? Are we spending so much time on our phone, so much time just moving from one thing to the next, rather than building those deeper relationships, asking the right questions, really committing to the idea that, yes, we've got to get to know people. And also, can we commit to the idea that not everyone is perfect? Like, can we accept others' flaws? There's this idea that, yeah, you definitely need to hold people to certain standards, but I also wonder now, are we expecting perfection from people? Do you expect perfection from yourself and then expect someone else to be perfect too? So that's kind of where I'm at with this whole, let's talk about relationships. How do we really account for the fact that they don't seem to last the way they used to? Even when you watch or listen to like dating shows, or there's some people who do relationship coaching now even, and they'll even have to guide you on how many questions to ask and how much time do you commit, and there's like whole questionnaires that they'll do. When you meet with those people, like, you've got to have a clear sense of your motives in mind. And now, I've never paid anyone to help me. And that's, again, hey, there's another aspect. Like, would you do that? Would you pay somebody to help you find, the love of your life? I feel like it's not that much different when you're using the apps and you pay for them. Like, I shouldn't say it is very different, because when you're using those coaches, or there's a difference. There's relationship coaches, and then there's also those matchmakers. And even with the matchmakers, they don't guarantee that you're going to necessarily find your match. What they do is like try to vet people out, have a better fit. Now, I know people who've met with them. I don't know anyone who's necessarily had success with it. That's not to say it can't happen. I just don't know those people personally. There are some very successful matchmakers out there. I follow Paul Brunson. I did do like a consultation with a woman based out of Tennessee. She asked some good questions, but it just didn't seem like, I think what was hard for me is she was in transition herself. And the idea of that is what made it harder for me to be like, all right, I can commit and invest in this. So those are just other things to factor in. So, but yeah, I wanted to touch on relationships. I really want you guys' feedback, your own thoughts about the direction of relationships in this day and age, and whether or not when people date, are they always looking to do something, non-committal, casual, or are there still people out there that are looking for something serious, that are looking to commit to someone, that want to find their complement, and they're willing to accept that that person may not necessarily be perfect, but that there's going to be more qualities that inspires them, that makes them, love them. There's also some, like, when you let yourself get sucked into Instagram, there are definitely plenty of really cute couples out there that give you hope, but then you wonder, like, what are the chances of this? Like, there's some people I follow, they're like high school sweethearts that came together, and they just really click, have that, you tell they just have that synergy. It's not the same for everybody. So those are just things I like for people to think about. Now, I changed the format of the show to make it so that it's just 30 minutes now. So
just digging in to it, it's a little bit harder because, what are the questions we're supposed to ask if we're trying to figure out, how serious to take somebody? So bear with me because I am in a more stable location now, but the problem is going to be that you're going to have to hear my dogs when they are going to leave. They're always loud when I first get home, so I do apologize for that. I'm going to have to move them into a little space so that they can be quiet. But yeah, that's my thing nowadays. Like, what are these questions that we need to figure out to ask people to make sure that we understand what will bring about a quality relationship? And I wish I had the answers. I'll be honest with you, it's not even for me the strong suit. Like, I've done research on it, but it just seems like everything's shifting. Everyone has a different idea of what matters most, what they're willing to commit to. So, oh, yeah, I hear them already. They're loud. Ah, so bear with me. I will get them to calm down in a second. Oh. All right. All right. So yeah, thank you. And I don't know if it's even one of those things where it's going to be the same question for every person. Like, you've got to decide for yourself what matters the most to you, what your deal breakers are, how you decide you're done. Like, you don't want to continue to invest time and energy. I think for me nowadays, like, the bigger thing is that it takes so much energy. At this age, I'm just like, I know what I like, I know how much I want to commit to certain things, and the fact is, it's not the same as it was when I was younger and had more energy. It's more selective, and it's based on the fact that, you know, I've been in some bad situations, definitely been in some bad situations, and don't want to repeat that. So yeah, gotta keep that in mind. So yeah, the goal for tonight's podcast was to, I'm sorry, y'all, I'm still not gonna take this coat off. It is freezing where I am right now. And talking about relationships, the funny thing is, it's like this that time of year where people will be in cuffing season and they have their special somebody. And to me, I'm just like, it's got to be worth it. Like, the idea there, I feel like in this day and age, I do have an understanding of those people that, like, they just have their their um their intimacy buddy. We'll put it that way because I don't want to use bad terminology. And for a long time, I didn't understand the point of that. It just seemed like, why do something that was insignificant and a waste of time? But at the same time, when you hit a certain age, you have a certain appreciation for the simplicity of things, for making life not so complicated, for knowing what to expect, to, have someone that you trust to a certain degree. But I have to admit that the idea of having like a more complete, more fulfilling relationship is the better goal, right? But just maintaining that hope and that idea that it's still achievable, it's still possible, that's where the difficulty lies. So again, before I walked in here, I was saying, what are the questions we need to ask? What is most important? And again, I think that's going to differ for every person. You've got to know, what your deal breakers are. You got to know what's most important to you. And are you willing to accept that no one's perfect? I know that in this day and age, people say one thing and they do another. I think that our expectations nowadays are that whoever you're with has to meet like this checklist of things that they've got to have accomplished and done. And in a lot of ways, I feel like I had some basic ideas that also were along those regards, but I've switched to, you know, is it someone I genuinely like and enjoy? Like, can we get real simple in that regards? Is it someone who can match my energy? Is it someone who, you know, I don't know, this pandemic has definitely given quite a few people some setbacks. So I feel like I have to give some leeway with that. But another part of me is just like, no, because rebuilding is hard enough as it is. So I'm going to make this podcast a little bit more responsive. I want to hear you guys' feedback, you guys' comments about how do we move past this dying idea of long-term relationships, of long-term commitment, even that leads to marriage. And for those of you that may not know, I've been married before. It was a very short-lived marriage. The deal breaker for me was domestic violence. So I don't feel like there was any room for, negotiation on that. And that person just changed. So there are certain situations where you get into something with unanticipated revelations. Let's put it that way. So yeah, I'm gonna have to throw that one out there. But I don't know that there's like this one size, one simple answer to this. Again, everybody has their own personal preferences. We've gotta make sure we factor that in. But do you believe there's some basic questions you can ask? I love the format of Kendra's show. I do think she asks like questions that get you thinking, like if someone you're dating was just with someone, in the particular episode I'm thinking of, it was like a few hours ago, and it was just like, are we supposed to take this person seriously? But yeah, like who even thinks to ask someone that on their first date? Like that's why I like the format of that show, because she asks like the basics, like how old are you, what kind of work do you do you have any kids, what are your past relationships like? But when she asks questions like that, when was the last time you were intimate with someone, I feel like that's a valid question. It lets you know, like, what does this person do, where are they at in life, what is their mentality when it comes to relationships? And I don't think it's a bad idea at all to get an early on sign of like, is this someone who's even marriage minded? Like I've met people who, especially if they're divorced, like would they ever do it again? You got to ask those questions. That's important to find out and know. But yeah, that's more or less what I was touching on today. We've got to all come up with our criteria. There are some people that have some good, introductory questions, but when it comes to digging deeper and going beyond that, what would y'all suggest? What do you all think is important to ask? So we're not even going to go the full 30 minutes today. We're going to keep it short and sweet tonight, but I did want to make sure I got on here, had our LITE Firestarters podcast, and just touched on a topic I've been skirting and avoiding, because it's not the easiest of topics. And like I've said before, when you hit a certain age, it's not quite the same. So if you're feeling me and some of these thoughts and this direction I've taken this, definitely don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe. I appreciate it. I love the support that I get. I've got consistent people who pop in. But it's really in the secondary views where we get a lot of support. So I appreciate that. And if there's ever any topics that you guys want to hear about, please share that with us as well. You can always do hello@loveinspiredteaching.com if you don't want to put it in the actual comments and you rather email, but that's the way to go. So have a great night. Thank you for joining, for those of you that popped in, and see you next Tuesday at 7.